Hello, this is Dave W7UUU, and for this edition of Dave's Radio Shack, I have a very interesting transmitter receiver that came along recently. It's something of a steampunk homebrew breadboard-style radio that was originally constructed by Bob Erickson, who held the call sign K7KKT, who lived in South Tacoma, Washington. He was born the day after Christmas in 1927, and joined the Radio Club of Tacoma in 2013 as member number 2611. He passed away in June of 2019 at the age of 91. This radio came to the Radio Club of Tacoma as a donation from his estate, and it quickly caught the eye of a few members who probably wanted to scavenge some cool parts out of it. But I saw it as a complete whole unit that really needed to be looked at more closely, and I'm really glad that I did. As you can see, it's very steampunk looking, and I think that was intentional by the builder. He started building it around 1970. According to his notes, it was first designed to be used on 20 meters only, although I don't know how long he used it on that band. There are a lot of notes that came with the radio, but nothing that talks about its 20-meter era of operation on the air specifically. The most recent notes date from January 2015, and in those notes he says he converted it to 40 meters, which was just about 9 years ago, so I'm not sure how much use it had between the 1970s and more or less the present era. But looking at the transmitter receiver in person, I'd say it probably hasn't been used in a very long time. It's possible that his 2015 notes only reflected the many changes he'd made over the years, and he just summed them all up in 2015. It's hard to say. He mentions in his notes having confirmed contacts with stations in Idaho, Washington, Montana, Oregon, and California, but there's no indication whether that was during its 20-meter days or later on 40. It's important to note that this radio is not a transceiver, but rather a transmitter and receiver on the same breadboard. The receiver uses two tubes, a number 24 tetrode as a regenerative detector, feeding a number 27 triode audio amplifier, which oddly also doubles as the transmitter's crystal oscillator. In the receive mode, the number 27 acts as the audio amplifier for the receiver and drives high-impedance headphones. To change from receive to transmit, the TR switch is pushed in, which causes a linear lever to operate a double pole set of contacts. Thus, the number 27 tube switches over to become the transmitter's oscillator. Once this is done, the operator must quickly throw the transmit-receive knife switch from the receive position to transmit to begin calling, and when done, throw the switch back to receive and withdraw the front panel TR switch to return the number 27 tube to audio amplifier duty. At this point, the number 24 tube is still operating as the receive detector, which can be monitored in the headphones at a lower volume since the audio amplifier tube is no longer in circuit. Rotating the TR knob to transmit would cause a mercury switch to engage the crystal oscillator for frequency spotting purposes, without actually keying the transmitter. This function appears to have been left unfinished, which means the mercury switch, as cool as it is, serves no function. In fact, the functional block diagram says that the switch is not presently used. Regardless, it's a somewhat unconventional method for handling transmit-receive switching and spotting. The transmitter itself puts out about 2 to 3 watts using a number 45 triode on the 40-meter band. It's a link-coupled output, which we'll talk more about in a minute. The power supply uses a number 80 rectifier, and there are 2 type OA2 regulator tubes for power regulation, housed together in a unique custom-made copper cylinder. The antenna output section is set up to feed either a balanced feed line to a doublet or to an unbalanced coaxial feed line, depending on how the antenna terminals are wired at the rear of the radio. There are 2 small incandescent lamps that can be switched in place to monitor RF current on the balanced or unbalanced outputs. There is a third 2-watt incandescent bulb that can be switched in to use as a dummy load and peaking indicator during tuning. The receiver tuning is also unusual. Instead of using a traditional variable tuning capacitor, it uses a unique homebrew slug-tuned variometer. There is an outer fixed coil with an inner rotating coil that is turned using the tuning dial. The inner coil has a pair of adjustable ferrite slugs for a greater degree of fine-tuning. The coils are adjusted using an insulated plastic screwdriver. The tool is semi-homebrew, and Bob built a small bracket to hold it inside the radio. You pull the screwdriver out to make fine adjustments to the ferrite slugs within the tuning coil. The screwdriver was also intended to adjust several other trimmer capacitors in both the receiver and transmitter sections. By storing the special screwdriver inside the radio, this meant it was always at hand when needed. The transmitter crystals are spaced 5 kHz apart and switched from the front panel, so the transmitter covers about a 20 kHz section of the 40-meter band. The tank circuit is link-tuned, and since the frequency range is so narrow, the transmitter tuning capacitor for the output is essentially set and forget. All that's needed to tune the transmitter is a little adjustment of the tuning link with your fingers to fine-tune the antenna coupling. One of the most interesting aspects of this transmitter is the provision for a paper tape loop to call CQ. The mechanism itself is very old, from the turn of the 20th century, and it's called a Lerner's AA transmitter from the Audible Alphabet Company of Boston, Massachusetts. Most of the parts used in this radio are antique, and the builder clearly went out of his way to source these old components. That was clearly part of his design intent from the beginning, which reinforces the steampunk character of the whole project. To use the paper tape CQ generator, a punch tape with holes for dots and dashes would be cranked past a set of contacts to send the CQ. A small round hole created a dot. An elongated hole created a dash, and the speed at which you turned the crank determined the sending speed. The paper tape passed between 2 contacts, and the pattern of holes produced the dits and dahs as needed. The radio didn't come with a tape, but it wouldn't be too difficult to make one. And of course, there is provision for a hand key to be connected on the rear of the transmitter for normal QSO operation. On the front panel, there's a wind-up mechanical clock in a handmade wooden frame and mounting, which is a nice touch for the look he was going for. It's an old clock, probably from the mid-20th century. There's also a very early mechanical pencil, likely 1940s vintage, in a custom brass holder that the builder brazed and shaped himself. Looking across the front panel from left to right, there's a fine regeneration control on the outside, along with a coarse regeneration control on the inside just behind the front panel. That makes sense for a regenerative receiver covering such a narrow tuning range. Then we have the main tuning dial, the large black 1930s Pilot Kilograd brand vernier dial that turns the slug-tuned variometer to tune the receiver. Next is the crystal switch to select one of the 5 crystals. Remembering that the transmitter only covers a 20 kHz range, 5 crystals are all that it takes. In the center of the front panel at the top is a small dim reading light, not very bright, meant to light up the work area in front of the radio. You can see that QSL cards are stored behind a little bracket on the front. The idea seems to have been that you'd work a contact, grab your QSL card, look at the clock, set of course to GMT or UTC, and fill it out using that little mechanical pencil, all right there under the dim light. Then you turn the light off, restart the paper tape loop, and crank the handle in the upper right-hand corner to start your next CQ call. It's quite the radio and a very interesting build. And no, I didn't attempt to power it up at this time. The AC wiring around the power transformer is cracked and frayed, and other internal wiring insulation is brittle and cracked in places. Given that at heart it's just a basic regenerative receiver paired with a simple CW transmitter, I have a pretty good idea how it would behave on the air. The larger issue is that powering it up could risk internal damage that could ruin it in ways that I'd rather not chance. Most notably, the filter capacitors are housed in custom-made brazed copper cylinders that are simply not readily accessible. Replacing them could mean destroying the builder's original construction, something I'm not willing to do. So what's the future of this radio? Well, I'm not sure yet. I'd hate to see it destroyed just to salvage the parts. It seems far more valuable as a complete museum piece than as a pile of components. I've been looking for a museum that might want to display it as a curated item, and will continue on that quest until it finds a safe future home where it can be seen by others. In the meantime, thanks for watching. This is really one of the most fascinating radios I've ever come across. 73, this is Dave from Dave's Radio Shack.